Okay, Alhamdulillah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh, brothers and sisters. Thank you for joining us in today's show. Actually, to be honest, this show kind of like took me back because due to the fact that I do a lot of street dawah here in Coventry, and a lot of the interactions we do have are from Nigerian Christians who talk with us and try to debate with us. So this is quite, connected to our street dawah that we do here in Coventry, especially outside the University of Coventry. We, like I said, we do have a high record or numbers of Nigerian Christians coming and talking to us and trying to debate with us and so forth. But yeah, today's show is going to be very interesting, and we've got a live poll on my YouTube channel right now. So go there and have your say. The question is there a genocide in Nigeria? Evidence actually shows that all faiths are under attack by terrorists, not just Christians or Muslims, but all faiths are under attack in Nigeria. To be also frank and quite blatant here, in 2015 and 2017, there were more attacks on mosques than anything else, any other religious establishment. So, with me today to unpack this fake Nigerian Christian genocide, which Trump seems to be falling for it, and gun ho, and we can kind of like unpack and see the double standards of the Christians in Palestine and the Muslims in Palestine who are being genocided, but nobody's willing to lift a finger. But when it comes to Nigeria, America is willing to send in troops to start a war or civil unrest. But like I said, today unpacking this particular topic is my brother YUSUF ISMAIL from South Africa. Brother YUSUF, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah, and good to be back again with you on this important topic. There is a genocide that is happening in the world today, and that is in Gaza. We've been discussing it for many months. There's certainly strife and massacre and slaughter that's happening in Sudan by this paramilitary terrorist outfit called the RSF. But to come directly to the question about, is there a specific Nigerian Christian genocide happening in the northern part of Nigeria or in Nigeria in general? The clear and straightforward answer to that is no. Now, what do we mean when we talk about Nigerian genocide or the so-called Nigerian genocide myth? This is a claim that there is a systematic, state-sanctioned, hear what I said, state-sanctioned genocide of Christians in Nigeria, despite the fact that a significant number of the members of the government in Nigeria happen to be Christian. Notwithstanding that fact, the claim is that Christians are in fact genocided in Nigeria, and that this has some sort of support by the state in some way, shape, or form. That entire narrative has been rejected by the Nigerian government, and many independent researchers and analysts who have described it as certainly falsehood, as fake news, as a mischaracterization of the nation's security challenges. Some of the individuals that have been promoting this kind of idea that there is a Nigerian genocide have been predominantly, the vast majority of people have been evangelical groups, have been right-wing politicians, people like Senator Ted Cruz, and there's Christian organizations like Open Doors, the Jubilee Campaign, and media personalities in relation to that have basically been effectively utilizing false information and false news that has been emanating from channels like PBS and like the Christian Broadcasting Network. For example, there's a well-known Christian broadcasting network. I think it's called the, if I'm not mistaken, called the Trinity Broadcasting Channel. I think it's called the Trinity Broadcasting Channel, TBN. Israel, and you go there, Nigerian genocide, and it'll then open up basically everything that you see on what is happening in relation to Muslims allegedly killing Christians in Nigeria. Nothing could be more further from the truth than that. Nothing could be more further from the truth. I mean, the fact that these same people who are effectively stating that there's a genocide in Nigeria, but are basically doing nothing when you see the absolute slaughter that is happening in Gaza daily, even after the so-called supposed ceasefire, shows the hypocrisy and the duplicitous double standards. There is certainly violence in Nigeria, but this violence stems from a whole range of issues, a whole range of multifaceted issues, including groups stemming from groups and divisions between death cult organizations like Boko Haram, ISWAP, so on. There's banditry clashes between the farmers, herders, over dwindling resources, over communal rivalries, over secessionist movements. Both Christians and Muslims have, of course, been victims of violence. But the data basically shows from groups like the Armed Conflict and Location and Event data, they basically show that the vast majority of the victims of groups like Boko Haram and ISWAP and ISIS in Africa and so on, the vast majority of them are Muslims. Muslims predominantly in the north. There is no evidence whatsoever. There's no credible evidence whatsoever of any official state-led plan or policy to systematically eliminate the Christian population. I mean, these are individuals that are basically, who are agent provocateurs, and people that have a specific agenda, a specific bent in terms of wanting to promote a particular type of view, a particular type of information on the specific subject, and so mislead the public in relation to that. So I'll give you one example here in relation to this. This is an individual, and he's well known to you. He's well known to me. But why would he be going all the way to Nigeria to essentially promote this idea? Why would he be going all the way to Nigeria to promote the idea that there's a genocide? So I'll just give you a quick rundown of this particular screen. This gentleman that we've basically got here. I'll just show you this character. You know him. He's an Islamophobe. He's a religious fanatic. He's someone that is out there to make mischief. Just want to listen to him. Can you see the screen? Who do we have here? Can you see this? Who is this? Muhammad? Can you see? No. What is it? What is this lunatic doing all the way in Nigeria with another chap called Korede Olawayen, whatever his name is, to discuss? And he's a Nigerian Christian, and they're in a hotel in Nigeria, and they're discussing Nigerian genocide. Now listen to this.
And I want to ask a question specifically about Nigeria. I'm not obviously from Nigeria, but Korede, who is my guest here, and I'm his guest. Actually, we're on both guests on both.
That's right.
Seasoned apologist for you and Fander Films for me. Being in Nigeria, we're hearing that there's an awful lot of suddenly people waking up to the realization that there's a problem here in Nigeria with Christians.
That's right.
And everybody's been looking at Gaza and the supposed genocide that's going on here. And all the focus has been on Gaza.
Yeah. You said supposed genocide in Gaza. Look at how shameless this animal is. Look at how shameless and animalistic he is in relation to this.
If there's not Jews, there's no news, is what they say. And of course, this idea of spending all our time on just, 0.02% of the entire Muslim world, without looking at the greater Muslim world and what's happening, especially this country.
Yeah.
This country, Nigeria, is the largest country in Africa. It also has the largest Muslim population, about 124 million Muslims.
You see what he starts off with? He starts off with demographics. That's clearly a concern for a religious fanatic that's out to evangelize and wants to convert people and preach to them and has an ulterior motive and an agenda. He starts off by talking about he's in Nigeria, sitting next to a Nigerian Christian and in a hotel room, in a hotel, and talk. You can see it's a pretty fancy hotel, a nice luxurious leather couch, talking about Nigerians being subjected to a genocide. You couldn't make up anything more obscene that these liars come up with.
There's no other Muslim population that big. It's the 5th largest in the world. After Indonesia, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, then comes Nigeria.
Yeah.
And we're not paying attention to what's happening here because we have just seen the statistics from Pew International and World Relief. And they're saying that in 2023, so 2 years ago is the last statistics we have, 83% of all Christians killed worldwide by Muslims are killed in this country.
Yeah.
You see, can you see the lie? Can you see the deceit by this man here? When the actual official report shows you that in the north, year after year, the vast majority of people that are killed in Nigeria by either through disputes on land or by fanatical outfits like Boko Haram and so on, or the bombings that take place for that particular matter, or killing of religious groups, the vast majority are Muslims. This fool goes on to say that they're Christian. I'm going to show you the stats.
In Nigeria. And no one's paying any attention. And that's why we're saying, hold on a minute. Why is it no one's paying attention to this? You're in Nigeria.
That's right.
You know of story after story, don't you?
That's true.
You probably know some people who have been caught up, who have either families have been massacred or raped or beheaded or kidnapped.
That's right.
What?
Raped, massacred, beheaded, kidnapped. This is a kind of atrocity propaganda that we heard in about Hamas. But this is a kind of propaganda that these people talk about.
What do you do with this? Because I can't understand that. I'm just a guest here, and I've only been here about 10 days. And it seems like everywhere someone has stories of these massacres.
Yeah.
Help us here. For those of us in the West, I'm coming from the West now. I'm here as a guest. You live here.
Yeah.
You know what's happening. Tell us what's happening.
Okay, so let me start with this. A lot of killings have been going on in Nigeria, and then most of these killings are not reported in the media. And because of that, there's a contention. Some are saying that these killings that are going on in Nigeria is not actually true. It's just an exaggeration, but that's not true. I would like to say that about 3 weeks ago, I was privileged to travel to one of the places affected in Nigeria, and I saw buildings, houses that were burned down by this Islamic jihadists. In fact, churches were also burned down. And one of the places that I saw, which are actually burned down, I mean, it's one of the churches that they have around that community. I had the story that sometimes when these guys come around and they are shooting, people actually have to run around, okay? They want to escape. So if you escape the shooting from the church, you don't escape the machete. So if you're coming outside of the church, then you are killed with the machete. So that's the way it works. Now, some are asking the question, so if all of these things are happening, why are we not seeing them? The truth of the matter is that sometimes these things are reported, and because it is something that happens over and over again in Nigeria, it has become normalized. So when it happens, people do not actually talk about it any longer because it is something that is happening almost every time.
So here's his argument. His argument is that it's so common, so regular, and then he's talking about an incident happened apparently 3 weeks ago, which hasn't been reported even in Nigerian news. It hasn't been reported in Nigerian news that people are being chopped up in machetes, but it's so common, so regular, so apparent on a daily basis that it doesn't make mainstream news. That's how bad it is. That's how bad it is. Well, and if that is the case, you know, how come we don't see? We've seen reports, a couple of reports on killings that have happened over the years, but how come we don't see, if it's so common and so regular and so apparent, how come we don't see the killings and the massacres and the slaughter of babies, children, women, blowing up of churches and so on the scale that we see in Gaza? Because in Gaza, I can show you on my phone right now on my phone. right now on my phone. Direct source, blowing up of children's heads. We've shown them on this particular channel many, many times. Daily. I can show you a situation now, right now, where Israelis have released Palestinians, and out of the 720 Palestinian bodies that have been released, about 90% of them have had their eyes gouged out, have had themselves tied with their hands against them, have shown signs of torture. In fact, there's one body that was released over the past 2 weeks of a body that was kept of a political group, of an individual way back from 1980. 40 years the Israelis kept him. Now we've got that evidence there before us on our phones, on social media, on X. All of that is there. If what's going on in Nigeria is on the scale as these two punks basically claim, that it's so apparent, so obvious, so in your face that it would be daily, therefore the media doesn't report it. Well, how come you don't even find these reports on social media on the scale or on the level that we have seen in Gaza, or for that matter in Sudan? I mean, we've seen atrocities in Sudan. I've seen atrocities in Sudan. How come we don't see them on the scale that you see in Sudan? It's because at the end of the day, this narrative that is presented is a narrative presented by these two punks, similar to the narrative that whites in South Africa, my country, were being subjected to genocide. And you know what the irony of all of this is? How come if Trump, the scumbag, is so concerned about Nigerians being subjected to genocide, how come he's only allowing the whites from South Africa, he gives them refugee status, and how come he doesn't give Nigerians from Nigeria refugee status? Does that ever bother anyone? How come if Nigerians are subjected to genocide, as the American administration is now claiming, then by all means, why don't you give them refugee status? But Nigerians are not. Nigerians have to go through the process of having to apply, like every other person, for a green card to enter, for a visa to enter the United States. If there was really genocide, well, how come you're not giving them refugee status? Is it because they're black and then they don't have white skin like you? So as you can see, these two individuals here are mischief makers, individuals with no sense of morality. And the fact is that there's no credible evidence of an official-led genocide or systematic forms. I mean, there's clearly religious strife that has been happening.
I really want to, we can continue with that clip, because that's really interesting and I appreciate that. We've got a lot of individuals in the chat, and we've got a brother backstage, Brent James. Brent James, can you just turn your camera on again for us, please, so we can get you on the stage, and then we can hopefully have a fruitful discussion. And if you've got any objections, feel free to put your objections forward. So we're going to have Brett James onto the stage now. Welcome to the show, Brett. Hope you're doing well.
What's up, brother? Peace, man. How are y'all doing?
Thank you. We're doing well. That's what we need
Good.
now. Thank you.
Yeah.
I just want to make the point, Mohammed, before Brett mentions this, that at the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly, when the Vice President, Kashim Shettima, affirmed Nigeria's solidarity with the people of Palestine, who for the past 23 months have endured an absolute genocidal campaign of sustained bombings and so on. The Nigerian delegation, this was just about, I think it was last month, I think it was last month. They voted towards the implementation of the two-state solution as a peaceful settlement. Nigeria's position on the decades-old campaign of terror on the people of Palestine by Israel has been consistent since 1988. And so what has happened is that in the United States particularly, you've had various far-right opinion shapers, people like Bill Maher, that fanatic atheist, people like Ted Cruz, Zionists themselves, Zionists like the individual by the name of Eyal Jacobi. They have pivoted this claim of Christian genocide in Nigeria, and they push this narrative with the same kind of fervor which was wheeled out earlier this year when the United States government stated that there's a white genocide in South Africa. In fact, lying, because if you recall that picture that Trump showed our president was clueless, Ramaphosa. He showed a picture of a whole lot of crosses. That town is about 2.5 hours away from me. It's in Newcastle. And those pictures of crosses were not actual graveyards, but were symbolic of the COVID deaths that had occurred. Not that all of them were COVID deaths, but the COVID deaths that had occurred. And also that there were killings in a farm area where both black farmers, black employees, and some white farmers were killed. But it's been presented in a sense that there's some sort of genocide. And so not surprisingly, similarly now, no one's denying the fact that you've had death cults. Of course, how powerful they are, it begs a question like Boko Haram and many of these other extremist fanatical groups that have been operating. But what has happened now is that the propagandist goal by the Zionists has been particularly to promote the ideas of rape, beheading, killing of babies alive, just like the propaganda that was happening after October 7th, which is now they've now stated that it's happening in Nigeria, which is a lie. It's a lie.
What we're going to do, hold on. We're just going to hold on there because I really want to get some feedback from Brother Brent. I'd love to get his take on this so-called genocide in Nigeria. What's your background, Brent, and what's your input towards today's show?
My background, man, I'm from Baltimore, Maryland, and I'm a Muslim of the book. I don't have no imam. I don't have a mosque of my own. I just prostrate, worship my Lord alone, and I'm not connected with no groups. And what's happening over there with the Nigerians and the Christians, if the Nigerians are really Muslims that read the holy book and not just go off what they imams say, they wouldn't be slaughtering the Christians, because it says in the Quran that if the Christians may seek another way, then let them live. Let them live, and let them live until they enter another course, the course of Allah, right? Islam is all about mercy. Now, let me read this real quick out the holy book. It's called chapter 5, the Fool, page 272, Surah 82. It says, "Thou wilt certainly find the most violent of people in enmity against the believers to be the Jews and the idolaters, and thou wilt find the nearest in friendship to the believers to be those who say, we are Christians. This is because there are priests and monks among them, and because they are not proud." So, real Muslims don't kill. Real Muslims don't kill believers. Now, Christians are the nearest to us in friendship. That out there, what's happening up in Nigeria, I don't really worry about what's happening out there because I'm in the Western world and there's a lot of racism, a lot of thieving, a lot of murdering out here of black men and non-white Muslims and white Muslims. And
I just want to add something. The data really shows that's coming out of Nigeria. The data shows that non-state actors have attacked both churches and mosques in Nigeria. While there have been more attacks on churches in the last 6 years, the data reveals that there were more attacks on mosques in 2015 and 2017. These these people who
Now,
are
hold on now. Now, listen, man. It says here in my book that if they fight you in the mosque, slay them. But if they stop, spare them until they enter another course. Now, once they roll up in that mosque and start rah-rahing, we can slay them with no problem. Now, like, I don't know how that is when a Muslim steps into a Christian church, but I know out here when that happens, more than likely the Muslim gets shunned. And when the Christian goes in the mosque, he gets embraced. You know, like, this is a lot of political garbage that's going on. Only to stop.
Brent, I want to come in. You had a lot to say.
Let me finish, brother. Let me finish, brother.
I'll give you a minute to finish, and then let me come in.
Brother, let me finish. Okay, yeah.
So go ahead, sir.
All this is to stop Islam spreading throughout the whole world, because Islam is truth. Islam is peace. Islam is he who submits his will to the will of God, which is the will of good. Now, this whole Christianity thing, you know, like, it started with Saba, sun worshippers, Queen of Sheba. Solomon pulled her up and brung her into Islam, rearranging her throne, then bringing her unto his palace, which Sheba thought it was a expanse of water, but it was a palace on water, but that's another story. But Muslims is all about peace. We're not about murdering and baby murdering. We don't get down like that, man. You know, that's that Jew Talmud cabal literature. And all this is about, they want to make these sacrifices so they can strengthen the power of their idols. This is how they do it. And that's how the Catholic Church do it. Hold on, yo. Let me end with one more thing. The Pope, the Catholic Church, what they do is go to continents, tribes all around the world, destroy them, convert them, take their gods that they worship, bring it to the vault that's in the Vatican, so they can have all these gods from all over the world that they can add to their evil power, using the gods of the people.
Okay. I've got a question for you. Why do you think Trump is willing to sacrifice American troops to save the Christians in Nigeria? And why does he say it's a genocide when in reality the genocide that's really taking place is in Gaza?
Listen, Trump walked into this garbage. He's cleaning up Biden, Bush, Clinton, all the way back to Ronald Reagan. He's cleaning up a big mess. And he's not the one that caused all this, but he's the one that's stopping all this. This is why they're all looking at Trump, because the people who started all this, they stay behind the scenes. You don't see them. They are people that you know not.
Okay, we're gonna let YUSUF come back now. Go ahead, YUSUF.
Brent, you had a lot to say. So let me just come in here. The point behind this program tonight is that there has been claims by Trump, your president. I think, are you in New York, by the way? Do you stay in New York? You just got a new mayor there, right? Are you in New York?
No. I'm in Maine.
That's what I heard in New York. Yeah. What our aim here is, just to hear me out, Trump basically made the claim earlier that there was a genocide of white people in South Africa. That's not happening. There is a genocide happening in Gaza against the Palestinians. He doesn't acknowledge that. Now, just over the past week, he's clearly someone that has no knowledge. He's a transactional guy. He's a business guy. He's out to make money. He doesn't know much about politics. But now someone has informed him that there's a genocide of Christians in Nigeria. The reality from the ground is that there is no genocide of Christians in Nigeria, and that the claims of any kind of religious war between Muslims and Christians in Nigeria are simplistic, or the idea that the Nigerian government would want to kill Christians is so ludicrous because there are Christian ministers and Christian religious individuals who are affiliated with the church in the Nigerian government itself. What the reality seems to show, and what Muhammad has pointed out, is that there have been conflicts that have been driven by ethnic rivalries, by land disputes, by criminality, and religion comes secondary. So Boko Haram, which emerged, I think, in 2002 and then positioned itself in the Borno state in 2009, the vast majority of the people that were killed by Boko Haram were Muslims. The vast majority of religious buildings that were destroyed by Boko Haram were mosques. Of course, there were churches that were burnt and some Christians were killed, but by and large, most of the victims of the violence in Nigeria, and this is not what I'm saying, this is what the statistics are showing, the reports are showing, that most of the victims have been Muslim. And similarly, what we now have is a situation where there's banditry in northern Nigeria that puts the Fulani herders against the Hausa communities. So there you have a situation of both inter-Muslim violence against each other, Muslim on Muslim violence. So coming back to what you said you believe in the Quran and you support the book. You've got your own way of practice, and I respect that. And you mentioned the fact that the Quran basically epitomizes peace and justice and standing up for righteousness. The reality of the situation is if you apply that principle in the Nigerian context, what we see once again is fake news on mass display. And I'm saying, as an American,
of course, I agree. Fake news. Fake news.
Shouldn't it be the time for people like you to advise those sick, satanic, evil Zionists in the United States who are wanting to turn the world's attention from the real genocide that's happening in Gaza to a fake genocide, albeit there's some violence? Shouldn't it be the responsibility of the Muslims and people like yourself to turn the attention of these evil people to the real injustices that's happening in the world?
Okay, now listen, like you said, this is all fake news. There is truth to it.
Yeah.
But America lies all the time. Now listen, man, I'm nobody. I'm like I did time in prison, grew up in the streets, the poverty. I'm nobody. All I am is a servant of Allah. All I can do is observe my duty as a Muslim. Give the good news and the warning, and I'll just keep it moving. Because my Lord said, hey, you're not a warden over them. You will not be asked for what they did. Now, what I know is this, that Trump, like I like Trump. I do, man. I voted for Trump because what he stood for and what he opposed, which was LGBTQ rights, feminization of black males, abortion, war. Trump was against all these things, and he was for the people. Hold on. Let me finish.
Was he against sexual abuse of children?
Yes, of course. Yes, he's against. He's against.
What was he doing on Epstein's Island? What was he doing on Epstein's Island?
Hey, listen.
Doing on Epstein's Island?
Okay. I'm about to tell you. I'm not concerned with him. Listen, I'm not concerned with hearsay about a man's penis. I'm not concerned what a man do with his sexapades. It don't concern me.
So
Now,
how
listen
can
to
that
this.
person be a source of morality and guidance for us if he developed a relationship, a professional relationship with a financier and a sex offender, Jeffrey Epstein, and traveled with him on his plane jets, in all probability, to the Epstein Island where girls were being sexually abused?
Well,
How can
here
that
in the
person be a
UK,
source of morality and guidance?
I want to add, in the UK,
All
we
right.
had this so-called prince, Andrew. The title has been taken off him now. Andrew, of course, the brother of Charles, he's just been basically done for hanging around with Epstein. Images of him, in close quarters with Epstein and some of his young female companions, and of course, emailing him. So why isn't Trump now having the same punishment that this Andrew is having? Andrew is being
Yeah.
shamed big time.
Let me tell you this, right? Hey, even Americans, even white America here in America, hate Trump. Hate him. You know why? Because he's destroying the system. He's destroying this system. You guys heard of the New World Order, right? You know we going into that right now with everything technology, the mark of the beast, the chips, all that. All that's happening right now, man, up in Western America. Y'all worried about slaughter up in Nigeria. Man, listen, I'm worried about not taking the mark of the beast. Okay, now he's tearing down this system. This guy Trump, hey, he beat up the feds. He beat up the FBI. He beat up the CIA. These are enemies of black Muslims in America.
Brett, the same leadership in America is calling to save the genocide of the black Christians in Nigeria, while the genocide that's taking place in Palestine, which is apparent, even historians and commentators are saying it is a genocide. Why isn't the American establishment willing to do, especially the Christians, and these are for the Christians in the chat, these so-called love all and hate none type of Christians who like to say we like to turn the cheek, Jesus was persecuted and so forth. These are the Christians who are running your country, who are calling for the demolition and the genocide of the Palestinian people, so you can establish the second coming of Jesus. Why isn't the Christians, the community of Christians, speaking out regarding the genocide in Palestine?
Because the Christians have no power in America. The Catholic Church does. The Pope, the Universal Church that funds Christianity. That's the power. Christianity is just a name. It's just a name. That's it. They have no leader. They have no structure. They don't even read the book. So, I mean, listen.
My last question.
Listen,
my last question from me is going to be this Charlie Kirk situation. That's all of a sudden gone quiet now. Nobody is talking about it. You have Candace Owens raising some conspiracy theories about it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this assassination of Charlie Kirk. And do you think it was an inside job?
Yes, of course it was an inside job. It was an inside job to make Islam look messed up. Because Charlie Kirk had an issue with Muslims, really black Muslims in America. And he wanted America to be that old-fashioned Christianity home and, method way of living. And, I think this, man, I think these Zionists sent that sniper to do that. And after they make all these media videos of Charlie Kirk speaking down on Islam and how it's messing up America and all this, they make it look like an inside job, but on the strength of a Muslim. Yet it wasn't a Muslim dude who did it. It was an average white guy. White kid, but they don't make a huge issue about it because it wasn't a black guy or Muslim or nothing of that. This guy didn't even have a religion. He was just some regular dude, man, regular guy.
Okay,
And
well,
you know,
there's nothing for
just like,
the use of anything that you want to share.
just like when Trump almost got killed when he got shot in the ear by the sniper. Same thing. They were sent by Zionists because he ain't doing what they say. Trump is going against the grain. This is why the leaders of America, the what they call the shadow government, hate Trump. Because if you look at the word government, within the word, you see govern men, over men. Nobody's over men but God. Government is for the people, made by the people to serve the people. But the government has went astray because they got these Zionist claws in them that's seeping through America, that's making mischief, that's causing mischief and bloodshed in the land. And it's spreading so much that now it's up in Nigeria going crazy.
Brent, I want to ask you a question.
Man, this is just bananas, man. It's bananas.
Have you spent prison time? Have you done prison time? I'm just curious to know.
Yeah, yes, I did.
I see on your neck. I see on your neck you've got a tattoo of a bow tie. Were you higher up? Were you higher up in the hierarchy?
Yo said I got a tattoo. Hold on, brother. Don't disrespect me like that. I don't got a tattoo of a bow tie on my neck, brother. That's not a bow tie. That's the burning bush with the dove descending. That's that scene in the Bible when John.
How many years did you do how long did you do as far as time is concerned? And did you accept Islam in prison?
I was born a Muslim. I just didn't know it. You know what the book say? Say, listen, Muhammad said, everybody is born a Muslim. It's their parents that make them a Jew or a Christian. All right. But listen, I discovered knowledge itself when I was 19 years old, locked up in jail, waved up as an adult. But I didn't really step into the book itself and study until about 6 years ago. But
how old are you now? Yeah. How old are you now, Brent? How old
43,
are you now?
43 years old.
And how much time did you do? How much time did you do, if I may ask?
11 years old. 11
homicide?
Years.
Was it homicide?
My last, hold on, but let me finish. I'll tell you, man, it ain't no problem. My last bid was in Sousa Baranowski, Shirley Max, level 4 prison in Shirley, Massachusetts. I did 5 years for armed robbery. For armed robbery of a restaurant. Nobody got hurt. There was no gun. It was a strong arm. That's why I got 5 years. They lied and they said that they seen the outline of a 9mm in my waistband. Okay. But I got 5 years and I did it. But let me tell you this. My Islam has been around me my whole life. I just chose to live the street life. But when I got released during my 5 years in 2013, I got released from 2008 to 2013. While I was locked up, there was this imam that came to the jail every weekend, Brother Randy, and he runs Mosque number 11. That's in Boston, Massachusetts. And the jail that I was in when I got lowered, like in the lowest security jail, a level 3, a medium, I went to Norfolk. That was the prison Malcolm X went to. And I looked at his cell. You know, they got his window green. And you know, that represents Islam, the land. Okay, green and gold on the inside, land and wealth, right? So, but while I was there, this brother Randy, he gave me the book and I started studying the book. reading the book, and I have become so much in love with the book that it's been a part of my life, my companion, since I've been out of prison, really. Like, and I've been out of prison, for 11 years now. So that's the only, and during that time, I done read this book 4 or 5 times. I done rewrote the book verbatim in a book myself. And it took me 2 years to do it because I wanted this word in me. I wanted it imprinted it on my mind. Because growing up here in America, you get brainwashed at a young age. And if you don't make a step, to start reprogramming, you will die in a disbelieving condition. You understand? So my Lord chose me. I am in whom he pleases. So he chose me, and I've been studying the book really heavy. And like, I have a YouTube page on here. It's called Brent James on YouTube.
Have you met some of the brothers from the nation? Have you met some of the brothers from the nation of Islam?
Yeah. But listen, for some reason here in the West, brothers can't unite. Because it's all about how much knowledge you know, how much knowledge you got on tap, and how much money you got. Okay, brothers cannot unite here. Believers have a hard time uniting. And that bothers me a lot. But it's okay, because I make Muslims on my own. I done brought home a few people to Islam. So, man, I'm all right with that. But one thing I don't like is, just us not uniting, man. Like, man, believers not uniting with one another, man, and hating on one another. And
Brent,
man,
it's great speaking to you, Brent. I would like to maybe explore your story more one day. What I would suggest, if you could leave your email address and contact details in the studio chat, or with Brother Muhammad, we'll make personal contact with you and interact with you more.
If you can put it in the private chat, on the right hand side.
Yeah, in the private chat. Leave your details with us in the private chat, and we'll contact you. We will contact you for that.
And then, thank you for joining us.
And then we wish you well.
All right, brother. You too, yo. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah, and Godspeed and all the best, Brent. Well, we hope whatever your journey is, we wish you the best. So coming back, there was an interesting interaction. I just wanted to point out before we slightly veered off the topic, just to wrap up this segment, is that right now, as I'm talking, there are in Nigeria Israeli, and this was just before I went off the topic, Israeli lobby groups operating in Nigeria, some under the cover of the strength of the diplomatic relationship between Nigeria and the US. These groups are getting large amounts of monies. They are recipients. They are Israeli vassals who follow the dictates of the empire without recourse to any kind of domestic public opinion or international obligation or any kind of conscience for that particular matter. And they're basically all of a sudden, I think the main point why we need to ask ourselves in this question, in this debate, is that why is it that the people who are suddenly interested in talks about a Christian genocide in Nigeria and who are trying to whip up that language and rile up the unsuspecting public, why is it that the vast majority of the people that are doing this happen to be pro-Israeli commentators? Why is that the case? I mean, and so this basically simply reinforces that the context of the ongoing conversation is, of course, their concern of the global world opinion having shifted and turned against Israel. I mean, now the Lancet report, according to the Harvard study, has now reported. We talked about the Lancet last year, and at the beginning of around about June 2024, we're talking about close to 200,000 people had disappeared or been killed, including children. Now the figures are close to 500,000. Now the figures are close to half a million. You're looking at about 400,000 to 500,000 rands. And the result of this, is that the facade of Israel always being correct and always being right, and always having the dominance of public opinion and the dominance in terms of promoting its propaganda, that's fallen away. That facade has collapsed. So therefore, you have a situation where now they are so desperate that they are paying social media influencers, people who've got a large number of channel subscribers, $7,000 at a time. I mean, think to yourself, why is it that they would get people, rats and what we would call low-life trailer park trash like Tommy Robinson all the way to Israel? Why would they pay for the guy's visit? And they humiliate him and treat him like a trash. Why would they do that? The result that you have right now is that global attention is increasingly fixed on Israel's atrocities, on the Israeli genocide, and there's a broadening international consensus that is taking the grip of the public mind. And so what you have is a situation is that these particular people are now in a situation of such terror and such desperation and such humiliation that they want to now consolidate and rebuild their propaganda apparatus in the terms of the regime of censorship that is basically being imposed in the United States, in terms of wanting to shift the global attention to Nigeria, to a so-called Nigerian genocide. All of a sudden, if they claim that it's been happening for years now, why is it only now the United States suddenly so suddenly, even though the killings recently haven't been as bad as they have been in the past? I mean, you look at some years, I think 2018, 2017, there's been really some bad stuff going on in Nigeria. A lot of Muslims were killed. Quite a few Christians were killed as well. Communal violence that was taking place, some kind of sectarian strife, and so on and so forth. But it appears to me that now, right now, is it happening, because of the fact that Israel is now naked and bare for the entire world to see, what's happening? There's now a forced kind of takeover of TikTok. Why is Netanyahu so concerned about TikTok? Why is Larry Ellison? Larry Ellison owns a company called Skydance. Skydance was a small media production company that was operating under the Paramount Pictures, that was producing movies like Mission Impossible by Tom Cruise and all of that back then. Now they have taken over Paramount Productions. They've taken over some of these major news networks, and they are hardcore Zionist fanatics. So therefore, for those on the other end of the world, Israel and the United States has to reach into their playbook of forging and maintaining these kind of selective partnerships with agent provocateurs in the Nigerian context, and along regional and ethnic lines, and creating some sort of idea that, if the official line, the goal is naive. There's a goal out there. The goal is there. There's a naive goal, but there's a simplistic goal. That if the official line is that Muslims are inherently violent, and that Christians are endangered everywhere, and that Christians are being genocided in Nigeria by Muslims and by the government, then for them, Israel's war on Gaza would be justified. So if enough sentiment, if a reasonable amount of uproar can be whooped up against Muslims in Nigeria, it then sets a kind of a pretext for coordinating some degree of hate towards a Palestinian population and the armed resistance groups. So they will say, well, look, this is what you've got in Nigeria. This is Boko Haram. And look what you've got in Gaza. You've got Hamas and you've got Hezbollah. Even though Hamas ideologically is nowhere near a death cult like ISIS or Boko Haram or some of these African paramilitary groups, nowhere near like the RSF, or who are just engaging in violence for the sake of violence. So this is a kind of obscene distortion of reality. And it's a strategy which commentators in Nigeria, which people like us need to warn others that individuals should not fall prey to. The amount of lives that are lost, across the communities, even in Nigeria, where you have lives that are being lost or there's violence that is taking place, that should not be a kind of a distraction for the criminal network of Israel and the United States to continue their agenda. So what you've got, Jen, what I see this kind of fake Nigerian genocide, it's a cover topic, it's a distraction, it's a kind of a redirection of the culpability of the crimes of the United States government, of the Israeli regime, and essentially an obfuscation. There's an obfuscation and there's a deflection. So they're presenting something to misrepresent and give the world to talk about, instead of basically allowing Israel to face the accountability for its crimes. And can you point out anyone? Can you point out anyone? And this is a challenge to viewers out there. Show me one person that has been complaining about so-called genocide against Christians in Nigeria that has been equally condemnatory in condemning the genocide that's happening in Gaza. Can you show me one person? One, just one. One individual. Give me one individual that has been prominent in condemning the genocide in Gaza and is now equally saying, by the same consistent moral standards, we need to condemn a genocide allegedly happening in Nigeria. Give me one, not one. Because of the fact that there is no genocide taking place. Because if there was a genocide taking place in Nigeria on the scale that these fanatics and deluded fools are talking about, then by extension, they would have recognized the genocide that's indeed taking place in Gaza, and which is being recognized by international genocide scholars. I mean, I'll just give you the stats here. I'll give you the stats. Let me just go to the stats quickly. We've printed this out more. International Union of Genocide Scholars, Israel. I just want to open this up. The international, yes, Chen, I'm going to share this page with the brothers just to give you an indication. This is a scholarly outfit, not a Mickey Mouse group of individuals. This is just do a type on Google. Do we have it on the screen, Mohammed? Is it there? The International Association of Genocide Scholars has formally declared that as at 2025, via this resolution that has basically been passed, as at 2025, Israel's policies and actions in Gaza meet the legal definition of genocide as set out in the 1948 United Nations Convention. The resolution was passed with 86% of the voting members in favor. The IAGS based a decision on evidence indicating intent. That's a statement which we went through by Israeli officials. And of course, the acts of genocide, deliberate deprivation of water, killing, forced displacement, and of course, additional crimes that have basically been engaged. Now, this is an association of genocide scholars that have basically dealt with the issue of what's going on in Israel. Has the International Association of Genocide Scholars made any equivalent pronouncement on what's happening in Nigeria? Have they? Not one. Not one. So if you've got the International Association of Genocide Scholars that have declared what is happening in Israel and Gaza as a genocide, but have not done so in Nigeria, and then you've got these nutcases like Jay Smith and other religious fanatics that are talking about a genocide in Nigeria, sitting in a hotel, a 5-star hotel, because that's when I went to Uganda, by the way, and I went to Kenya, and I went to some of these places, we never went to 5-star hotels. We were basically using latrine pits as toilets. When we went right up to the north in Buganda, their latrine, there were no luxuries. This man is sitting in a luxury 5-star hotel in Nigeria with a fellow Nigerian, having the bloody gall and audacity to talk about a Nigerian genocide in a 5-star hotel with a Nigerian next to him, and having nothing to say and excuse, in fact, the actual genocide that has been recognized by the International Association of Genocide Scholars against what is happening in Gaza. So this makes the point, is that this is a cover topic. This is a distraction. This is an obfuscation. This is something to go out to misrepresent and give the world to talk about, instead of a line of ensuring that Israel is basically held accountable at the International Court of Justice, that its leadership is held accountable at the International Criminal Court. Now, why is it that the same people, let's assume maybe Gaza is too much for you to discuss. Why don't you talk about what's happening in Sudan? Why don't you talk about what's happening in other parts of Africa where you do see actual real killing? Why is it only Nigeria? Why is it that you don't talk about the Christian churches in Bethlehem and Christians in Gaza and churches in Gaza that have been destroyed? Why is it that in that instance, Christians don't become important when Jews are killing them, when Zionists are murdering them, when you have some indication of some extremist radical Muslim group that may be killing Christians, but at the same time killing the vast majority of its targets have been Muslims? Why is it only in that instance it becomes convenient? So Muhammad, the very instrument of suppression, the very instrument of organized violence that is deployed by people from the United States government and by the Israelis is now repurposed and handed to another situation where there's actually no genocide that basically is happening. And I want to ask the question, why? Why is this happening? Why do you think this is that? Do you honestly think that the United States is a broker for peace? Do you honestly think that the United States cares about human rights in Africa, in other parts of Africa? Well, I want to ask you this question. What does Nigeria have that the United States may want to have? Anyone bother to ask that? What does Nigeria have that the United States may, in fact, have an interest in? Mohammed, any guess? What do you think?
Well, I don't want to spoiler alert, but of course, there's natural resources.
Look at the figures. Look at the figures. Put this on the screen, Mohammed. This is the AI overview, and we'll go to the look at what we've got. Africa holds an estimated 125.5 billion barrels of oil in reserve, with the top countries being Libya, which is now controlled by an American proxy, no longer Gaddafi. Number 2, Nigeria and Algeria. Libya has the largest reserves on the continent, followed by who? Nigeria. Approximately 37 billion barrels. Algeria, which is a third, it's a far third. It's only 12.2. Then you've got Angola, 7.7, 5 billion, 3.7 billion. So they've got Libya. They've already got Libya. They've got their proxy. They're running a racket in Libya, and you've got a death squad government in power. Nigeria would be the next target, if there is, and I don't know if there will be. Trump is a man that has an attention deficit disorder. He'll say one thing on one day, and then he'll forget about it and say something else. And then he'll try and point you to a marble table in the White House, and then he'll forget what he says, and then he'll direct his idiot Secretary of State Marco Rubio to make a telephone call to him. So he doesn't have a strong attention span. It's not the brightest tool in the shed. But this is something, if I'm a businessman and I'm looking at countries with proven oil reserves as of 2025, look at what Nigeria has. And look at the next close other countries. So again, if Nigeria was selling sausages and was specializing in sausages, you think the United States would be interested in human rights? Do you think the United States would be interested? If Kuwait was basically specializing in selling of flowers, would the United States have gone and rushed into Gulf War I? Would they have done that? This is another interesting figure that people may be keen on looking at in terms of what's going on in Nigeria here. Look at this here. The American interest. If you can just play this on the screen here. As of 1 January 2025, Nigeria's crude oil barrels and condensate reserves stand at approximately 3.78 billion barrels. The reserves life index at current production levels, Nigeria's oil reserves are estimated to last 64 years, including a long-term potential as a global energy player. The US interest in Nigeria's energy sector is primarily driven by energy security and economic partnerships. Wow, look at this. The United States is Nigeria's largest foreign investor, with investments heavily concentrated in the oil and gas industries. It was also the primary purchaser of Nigerian crude oil in 2024. Who's that for the benefit for? Is that for the benefit of the Nigerian people? Or the American public? Or the major companies? US companies are actively engaged in Nigeria's oil sector, with the US showing interest in new projects such as potential investment in the ambitious Nigerian-Morocco gas pipeline project, which aims to connect West Africa to Europe. The overall US bilateral relationship pragmatic, with bilateral trade surpassing $13 billion in 2024, supported by mutual interests. The US provides security support to Nigeria, including counterterrorism assistance, which helps address instability that could otherwise threaten the security of the oil-rich regions and general stability in West Africa, thus indirectly supporting energy interests. In essence, America's interest in Nigeria's oil reserves remain high, framed by a desire for a secure and diverse energy market and a robust bilateral trade and investment relation. What do you make of that? What honestly do you make of this? US to set up military base in Nigeria's oil-rich region over Boko Haram? The Trump administration has never hidden America's hunger for critical minerals outside its shores, and is often accused of arm-twisting countries for economic and migration deals. And you've got idiots out there, idiots, who think the United States is interested in human rights. You think the United States is interested in the rights of people and people being killed? They're essentially supporting a genocide before our very eyes. They've killed more than 1 million people in Iraq. They've sent Afghanistan back to the Stone Age. If you look at William Blum in Killing Hope and the history of US military strategic interests in different parts of the world, they've caused more bloodshed and mayhem in the 20th and 21st century that has resulted in more deaths, more massacres, and more killings than World War I and World War II combined. More than World War I and World War II combined. What are we talking about here? Wake up, people. Any thoughts, Mohammed?
Yeah, it is quite profound how the way you demonstrated how clearly this is not really about human rights or protecting the Christians of Nigeria. It's based upon resources, and the list that you shown earlier. That of course Libya has been taken. Nigeria is next, and I
Yep.
think this is what they do. They send in proxy groups and armies to disturb the country, to uproot the country, and then they are the ones who are going to go back to kind of save the country. But in reality, what they want to do is rape the country of its natural resources, and then move on to the next country. I think Sudan was there, wasn't it, Yusuf?
Yeah.
Sudan on the
Somalia,
So,
Mogadishu.
so these
There's an
are
interesting article by Kurt Nemo and maybe I'll open this article on the phenomenal website by the Canadian professor Michel Chossudovsky. I had an email communication with him many, many, many years ago. I hope he's still around, but he was running an excellent website. This is a Canadian website called globalresearch.ca. It's been shadow banned, just like our channels has been shadow banned. So before you would click in global research on Google, it will open up it will basically open up the website itself. But now, unfortunately, what happens is that you have to physically go there and you have to type yourself. So this is an article, if I can just maybe expand it, which shows that Trump threatens to invade resource-rich Nigeria. They wanted to invade Venezuela, and so on and so forth. This was a report let's just go down here. Nigeria, bounty of natural resources. According to Nigeria's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the country is one of the most resource-rich nations in the world. It possesses oil and gas, gold, bitumen, coal, iron ore, limestone, lead and zinc, tin, bauxite, and lithium. Since 2013, China, that's a major threat, has invested over $1.3 billion in Nigeria's rapidly expanding lithium processing industry. The country's vast lithium reserves are estimated to be worth over $34 billion. This is lithium. Lithium is crucial for producing batteries for electric vehicles and renewable energy source systems. China has secured $20 billion in investment. China's investment in Nigeria has alarmed the US. China is expanding its approach from a focus on economic influence to greater military and information operations. Nigeria and China signed a deal to establish a military hardware production facility in Nigeria. Nigeria is a founding member of the Economic Community of West African States, and goes on and on and on. And then, here's the point. Trump, in response to Trump's 15% tariff imposed on Nigerian imports, Nigerian speaker said in April, Nigeria must act decisively to diversify its trade partnerships. Strengthening our bilateral relations with China presents tremendous opportunities for growth in trade, investment, and technological cooperation. So you raise your tariffs, we'll look elsewhere. The BRI in Africa and diversification at the expense of the United States are the real issue, not the persecution of Christians in Nigeria. Unverified narco-terrorism in Venezuela and attacks on Nigerian Christians serve as a fig leaf for the Trump administration to roll back BRI and also ensure the continuation of neoliberal domination of trade and access to natural resources. On more than one occasion, Trump advocated stealing oil from foreign nations. During his first term, he embraced stealing oil from Syria. Well, that's going to happen now. They've got their man, ex-Al-Qaeda in Syria. According to his then Defense Secretary, Mark Epstein, the illegal presence of U.S. troops in Syria was to deny ISIS access to oil revenue. During an interview with C-SPAN in 2019, Trump said in the United States will remain in Syria and we'll be deciding what we're going to do with the Syrian oil. In 2013, he said, I still can't believe we left Iraq without the oil. And he went so far as to demand Iraq repay the US for the $3 trillion squandered on the invasion. Imagine that. You waste your own money to invade and kill and destroy another nation, and then you want them to pay you back with oil. I mean, what a low-life bastard are you? Trump has said the same. How about we buying oil from Venezuela? When I left, Venezuela was ready to collapse. We would have taken it over. We could have gotten all that oil. Would have been next door. Now, I mean, this is someone that is not mentally stable. Someone that is not mentally stable. He's already described as China as a strategic competitor. And so the same, in this article, the same rationale applies to Nigeria. The US not only wants a free hand to decide how Nigeria's natural resource will be exploited, it also wants to prevent its main competitor, China, from gaining a foothold in Africa. So there is a multifaceted approach that people need to sit aside and think. Is the US really interested in human rights, even for Christians? I mean, it sacrifices Christians on the altar of expediency. Check a book from the 80s. It was called World Orders, Old and New by Noam Chomsky. And there he speaks about how in the 70s, the CIA sponsored death squads in Latin America to destabilize these leftist governments. But in doing so, they would enter churches and they would hack nuns to death in Latin America, Catholic nuns. And these paramilitary death squads, like the Contras, were backed and supported by the United States government in order to do its bidding as a proxy and as it engaged in proxy wars to destabilize and dethrone these governments in basically in Latin America. And so, not surprisingly, I don't know if there will be potential military action in Nigeria. You know, anything is possible nowadays. I have my doubts that anything will happen. But the fact that it's mentioned, anything is possible nowadays. Anything is possible. We've got lunatics, maniacs, and narcissistic psychopaths in power. Anything is possible. We live in a strange, bizarre, schizophrenic world. We live in a strange world. And the world is changing. And I mean, American society is changing. Look at what happened today. Phenomenal resurgence of Zohran Mamdani in New York as a mayor. For those who don't know Zohran Mamdani, I would urge you to get into contact or in touch with his far more highly brilliant father, Mahmoud Mamdani, and study his works and study his a true scholar, a true political scholar with a genuine Islamic background. Study his works. And if Zohran is anywhere close to his father in terms of his intellectual output, then hopefully, inshallah, we will see something positive and beneficial for New York City and other parts of the world. And I think in a way, you know, and this is basically called the silver lining. I don't think he would have come into power had October 7th not happened. October 7th, essentially, on October 6th, on October 5th, on October 4th, the entire world, as many people have mentioned, forgot about Gaza. People never knew. You mentioned Candace Owens, Mohammed, earlier. I was listening to the interview that was posted by Brother Nazam, the interview she did with Norman Finkelstein, I think it was yesterday or the day before yesterday. She mentioned that before October 7th, she didn't even know what Gaza was, what the West Bank was, what the conflict was. She just knew about Israel. And what happened on October 7th and what subsequently happened with the Israeli genocide, the silver lining is that it blew the world up so much so that I don't think the Zionists and the propagandists will come back from this intellectual global hiding that they have received at an ideological level. I don't think they will ever come back at an intellectual level in being able to convince people that their position is right. In fact, the entire world can see how evil and how systematically rotten their ideology and their belief system and the evil is. And these are the people. These are the very people that Surah 9, verse 29 speaks about, the jizya. You don't impose the jizya on just your average Jew or Christian. You impose your jizya on your modern day Christian and Jewish Zionists if you eventually come to power, to ensure that these people get humiliated. And when the time is right, we'll even make Trump and Netanyahu pay the jizya in their underwear. Openly humiliate these evil people. They are falling. They are collapsing. Day by day, they are collapsing. That is why Trump was shitting in his pants just a couple of days ago when the pictures were so clear that Mamdani had destroyed an Andrew Cuomo. And imagine that they are so low, so evil, that they have that the only best candidates they've got are sex abusers and sex traffickers. I mean, Andrew Cuomo, he's got a history of sexually abusing young women, young girls. Why is it that the vast majority of these particular people that are so supportive of Israel, that are now talking about a genocide against Christians in Nigeria, why is it that the vast majority of these people are pedophiles and are involved in sex abuse and justification of pedophilia, or have had some sort of close links with Jeffrey Epstein and his group and community? Why is it that these are the type of sick people that are talking about genocide in Nigeria and trying to, besmirch the character of Mamdani and so on? Why is it that we have this? It's because they've got nothing. They've got no morality. They've got no background. They've got no Quran. They've got no hidayah. They've got no guidance. They've got no Sirat al-Mustaqim. So what do you expect from them? They're down onto the path of hellfire and destruction. That's the only outcome. This is what the Quran speaks about. These are the people that are destined for damnation. If they don't repent, there's no way out for them. We stated boldly and clearly they are destined for eternal damnation. And we make no apologies for it. And all their puppets and their fake news influencers and social media influencers and Christian fanatics and small timers like Jason, none of that. Nobody believes they're garbage any longer. This is we've seen the total hogwash and the falsehood and the propaganda and the Firaun-like behavior that has been emanating from these particular individuals. I think there's no way out. There's no way out for this lot of individuals. But I've said quite a bit. And over to you, Mohammed. Anything that you want to say and share?
Yeah, I totally agree. What can I actually respond to? Because I can see the same pattern that's been taking place in for the last decade of uprooting government just to take their resources. And a lot of these so-called militias are funded by particular governments to uproot the country, so they can and so-called looking for freedom and looking for the rights of women and so forth, to kind of invade, gives them an opportunity to strip the country of its bare resources and move along. This is the same blueprint that they've used from day one. There's nothing new to it. And why is Trump willing to now put his troops on high alert? And even reports are coming out that the Pentagon are also drawing up plans now to attack Nigeria to save the Christians. Is it because they really want to settle there, establish a base? And what you mentioned there is very important, the aspect of China. China is a huge player. When they involve themselves in countries and doing business with them, they do it on the aspect of technology, economical options. They don't use conflict and war or any type of militias. They actually do a good trade deal with the country. Okay, we will help you build roads, we'll help you build hospitals, we'll give you technology as long as we can, take or use up some of your natural resources. But America is the other way around. They want to use military force and then blame it on the country that's giving them the natural resources. So, Brother Yusuf, what can we say? Unfortunately, we fall for the same type of fake news, same propaganda, and that chart that you showed there was profound. you had Libya, you had Nigeria, and I think Sudan was, you had the third country was Algeria, if I'm not mistaken, and the fourth country was Sudan. And you can see that, you can see how it's all falling into place. You know, of course, Algeria was very heavily colonized by the French and other European countries. But I guess Algeria are quite strong now, you know, and they won't let other countries.
Sure.
Put that onto the screen. Okay, I've just put
this onto the screen, Mohammed, whilst you're talking, because I want people to even see this. Look what it says here. This is a report dated to March 19, long before this. House Speaker stands down probe of CSOs over USAID, the NGO, apparently funding Boko Haram. Look at this. The ad hoc committee chaired, the Speaker of the House of Representatives intervened in the action taken by the ad hoc committee investigating Nigerian civil society organizations and international development partners over alleged links between USAID funding and the terrorist group Boko Haram, asking the ad hoc committee to stand down its probe. The ad hoc committee, chaired by Honorable Victor Obuzo, was established following a statement by a U.S. congressman alleging that funds from USAID had inadvertently supported Boko Haram activities in northeast Nigeria. In response, the ad hoc committee issued sweeping requests to NGOs and development partners demanding comprehensive documentation covering decades of operation. Now, why do you know? This is mind-blowing. What is USAID? What is USAID? Do you know what USAID is? USAID is the United States Agency for International Development. It's an agency of the US government. This is it. Let me share this. It was founded by John F. Kennedy. It was founded by John F. Kennedy. And here we are. Here's USAID. And basically, the story goes, here we are. It's a de jure independent agency of the United States. Until 2025, it was the world's largest agency for foreign aid. USAID was established to compete with Soviet Union during the Cold War through the use of soft power. In 2025, the Trump administration ended 83% of overall projects. But the talk goes in March 2025 that USAID was funding Boko Haram. USAID, Boko Haram. US condemns Boko Haram. House Speaker stands down probes of CSO over USAID. USAID funding Boko Haram. ISIS is the first post of Africa. USAID has gaps in plan, risk mitigation and monitoring. So how do you explain the fact that an agency of the United States has been possibly funding a fanatical extremist death cult like Boko Haram? You couldn't make this up. This is like straight out of the Al-Qaeda playbook. Who funds the individuals and then you claim to fight the wars against them? You couldn't make this up. Sorry about that. Mohammed, over to you.
Yeah, that's quite shocking, isn't it? To be honest, it's not that surprising, but it's the blueprint. It is always a blueprint that, you know, these Western countries are the ones who aid and fund these militias to cause havoc, while these other Western countries will go in and take its natural resources, blaming it on these militia groups which they themselves funded. And we see this happening again and again and again. So, you know, unfortunately, no Christian really wants to come on and debate this or talk about it. And I'm very surprised. I'm very surprised that nobody wants to come and talk about it. But the clip that you showed initially of Jay Smith was quite interesting. I don't know if we can continue playing it until the end, if that's okay.
Yeah, we'll go to that. I'll just play to that clip. I don't want to play more of this guy's material, but and give him kind of media publicity or credit. But let's just play that. I'll go to that and see that, and then we'll basically let me just share the screen, and then we'll take it from there. I just didn't want to give them free, because they don't give us free air. These people wouldn't give us. They're so afraid that they wouldn't play our content. We're not afraid to play theirs.
About again, I know of a community in Nigeria that is being attacked almost every week, but you don't get that in the news again. I mean, maybe once in a while you say, somebody say, hey.
So how come you don't get that in the news, but you also don't get that on social media? Because I know for a fact that here in South Africa, we have horrific killings. They don't make the news, but they make it on social media. They make it on our local papers daily. There's an awareness of what's going on. How come there's nothing like that?
A number of people are being killed here. They died here. By the way, if you hear that 500 people have been killed in a particular place in Nigeria, know that the number is about 700 to 1,000. Because the government do not actually want these numbers, these real numbers, to be reported. Of course, nobody wants to hear about these numbers, and you want to come to invest in our nation. So there are some of these places that have been attacked, and these things have not been mentioned. They have not been talked about. Why? Because it's no longer good news. It's no longer palatable. And that's the reason why a lot of people are contending about this. A lot of people are. In fact, one of the persons that I was able to engage, I had, according to the story that was being told, her dad was actually burnt, set ablaze in the church. So the man was actually burnt right there in the church. How many of these stories do you see out there? How many of these stories do you hear out there? So these things are actually happening. And what is going on right now, I'm so thankful that the world is talking about it right now. Because these are things that...
Yeah, he's just narrating a story that he's been told by somebody else that this is what happened. You know, there's no evidence whatsoever.
There's no facts. We've been talking for well, I mean, on this stream, but I mean, over the past year and a half, when we discuss and present material, we bring hardcore facts, we bring pictures, we bring images, we bring news reports, we get facts out there. Have you seen and how many minutes has this played for? This played for so far 4.51 minutes. Have you seen any facts being presented? Anything? Just hearsay.
We're actually experiencing in this nation.
Just before I came here, about a week before I came here, we have a well-known left-leaning comic named Bill Maher. Maybe you know of him.
Oh, yeah.
And he usually is very strongly pro-democratic and has always been a Democrat all his life and hates Trump and doesn't say much good about the conservatives. But he has a big following, a huge following. He's a secular. He's not a Christian or anything like that. And just the week before I came, he was on his show and he brought this up.
What he fails to state about Bill Maher, that Bill Maher is a hardcore Zionist. He's always been a Zionist. So why did Jay fail to mention that? Bill Maher is a hardcore supporter of the state of Israel. He's always been that for more than a decade.
And he was talking to the person that was opposite him.
Yeah.
He said, and representing the leftist media, the left-leaning media, he admitted it. CBS, ABC, NBC, CNN, all of these television channels don't ever report this. The only ones that are reporting this are Fox News and US News.
So that's Jay's favorite channel now, Fox News.
There is also Newsmax that reports it.
Okay.
These are right-leaning conservative news agencies. They're reporting it, but nothing on the left. And so he turned and he says, "What is wrong? You on the left. You are the major news gatherers. You're the ones that should be talking about this. All you talk about is Gaza, and the genocide that's going on in Gaza, when there's a much bigger genocide that's been going on much longer.
Yeah.
And this has been going on."
Did you hear what he said? There's a much bigger genocide that's been going on in Nigeria. Did you catch that, Mohammed? Did you just catch that?
on for tens of years, and it's by far the largest in the world, and not one word.
He said the largest in the world. They're sitting in a hotel in Nigeria, these two scoundrels, sitting in a 5-star hotel in Nigeria and saying the largest genocide in the world is happening in Nigeria. Can you believe what clowns we're dealing with here?
He said, this is not right. You cannot, this just the enormity of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And you're completely missing the news. The news must be all over the world.
That's
Why
right.
is it they are not talking about Nigeria, he asked.
Yeah.
And of course, I was on my way there and I sent this to all my followers and I said, do you realize, were all of you aware that this is happening in Nigeria? And most of them says, no, we've never been told.
That's it.
But you have to live with it.
Yeah, we know about this.
You know about it, and you're praying against it.
That's
you're
right.
going and you visited it 3 weeks ago before we, and you saw actually the burnt out churches, and you heard the stories. And for you, just talk to the camera and tell the people who are watching, listening, because they're going to be on my show, and most of them would not be aware of this. What do you want to say to them?
Okay, so what I want to say is that there's been a sort of misconception that what is going on in Nigeria is just about a community clash. That is what most people hear. They hear that, oh, this are community clashing. They are killing themselves over land and all of that. No, it's beyond that. Because when these people come over to kill, they're actually shouting and they're chanting Allah Akbar, okay? So not just killing people because they want to kill people, no. Most of the time, you see them reciting the Arabic, you see them chanting Allah Akbar while they're doing what they're doing. So what I want to say is that this is actually
You
beyond...
see what he does now? He immediately wants to put a religious spin to it. And the aim, as you will clearly see shortly, is because to try and say that what is happening in Nigeria is inspired and influenced by Islam and the Quran and the Prophet Muhammad. This is the aim of the polemicists. Lies. So far, we haven't been presented any facts whatsoever. No sources, no material, nothing to back them up. Just this character here, this bloke who's
I actually thought you might have some pictures or some images.
Nothing.
Something generated. Nothing. Just a story that he heard from somebody. Who heard from somebody. Of course.
Total hearsay.
Land grabbing, okay? A lot of community has been sacked by these people. A lot of community has been run over by these people. And what they want to do is that they want to keep on encroaching and take over these communities. That is exactly what they want to do. When Boko Haram were actually doing all of the things that we're doing, they're actually telling the people, they said that we, Boko Harams, we actually want to kill you Christians because you are infidel. And they extended that to Muslims because there are some certain persons that will say that, hey, Boko Harams are not just killing Christians alone, they are killing Muslims as well. The Boko Haram actually means...
The term infidel, where does it actually come from? From the Crusaders?
It came from the Crusaders. A Crusader term. Yeah. We don't have an equivalent, although it's been translated in the Quran, the word kufr or kafir, but it's not the same. It's not an equivalent. It's not an equivalent at all. Not an equivalent.
It's clear. They mention the reason why they're killing Muslims because they believe that some certain Muslims are going against them, and those Muslims, according to them, are not real Muslims because they believe anybody that does not go according to the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet is already out of Islam, even if you claim to be a Muslim.
So these are moderate Muslims.
Yeah, the moderate Muslims actually do not like what the Boko Haram are doing.
Yeah. And there are many moderate Muslims who are very upset with Boko Haram.
Exactly. There are a lot of peace-loving Muslims.
So they are also being macheted and they're also being killed.
Exactly. The reason is because...
So you see what happens now? He's forced to concede because the evidence shows that the vast majority of the people who are being killed are Muslims. They are forced to concede that Muslims are being killed, but these Muslims are not actually followers of Islam. They're moderates. They don't actually follow the Quran or the prophetic tradition or the Sunnah. This is a kind of typical Christian Zionist propaganda spin that you see.
Boko Haram are seeing them as non-Muslims now.
No.
Why? Because they are going against, according to them, the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet. The trusty thing is
so these these Muslims are being killed because they're going against the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet. Therefore, they're being killed. They're not the real Muslims.
The Boko Haram, when they make up their video, okay, in the interview, in the podcast, they usually cite the verses of the Quran, and they will also cite the Sunnah of the Prophet, the hadith of the Prophet. So what they are...
So the Yadith, he cites the Yadith. The Yadith and whatever the Yadith is and the Sunnah. I mean, you can't make this up. So now what's happening after 9 minutes, have we seen any evidence, any proof? Nothing. But after 9 minutes of the spin that has been presented, him and his father here, Jay Smith, are now saying that, look, these are authentic Muslims. They are citing the Quran and the Hadith, whatever that is, and basically trying to state that, look, these are authentic Muslims, just fulfilling the mandate and the teachings of Islam to be good Muslims. And by being good Muslims, you are violent and you kill other Muslims.
Saying is that we are backing for what we're doing. So if you are going against what we are doing, you're going against Allah and the Sunnah of the Prophet. Therefore, you're already out of Islam. We have the right to kill you.
Then.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
these are heresy wars, you might say.
Yeah.
And so both Muslims and so the Western press says, see, Muslims are being killed too.
That's it.
But they're not being killed by Christians.
No.
They're being killed by other Muslims.
Yeah.
They're being killed by Salafists. They're being killed by Boko Haram. Boko Haram, for those who don't know, means books haram. Books are bad. So it's against education.
Yeah.
And it was created to go against Western education.
That's right.
British education. And so now it has been taken over by ISIS. And so ISIS now controls it.
Yeah.
So it's become a lot more standard Orthodox Islam based on Wahhabism, the whole Wahhabi idea.
Yeah, and they have a very powerful network.
They have a huge
very powerful network. Yeah.
Okay.
So what do you make of what he said so far now? You heard the latter part, Mohammed. Are you there?
What can I say? You know, this is just propaganda. Typical kind of Jay Smith, of course. He's trying to put words into his son's mouth, so he kind of agrees with it. The moderate Muslims, you know, the heretical war.
The moderate Muslim, according to Jay and according to so Jay agrees with Boko Haram, because Boko Haram says that these Muslims are actually being killed because they're heretics. And Jay agrees with that contention. Yes, they are heretics. They're not Orthodox, real Muslims. So therefore, they are being killed because of that. So can you see? He's actually endorsing the extremist position. So because Jay is himself, in a twisted way, what people are not seeing, in a kind of a twisted, ironical, cynical form of way, Jay is actually siding with the extremists. If Boko Haram are killing people on the basis of the Muslims being heretics, well, Jay is agreeing with that contention. He says, yes, these Muslims are being killed, but according to Jay and according to Boko Haram, these Muslims are not following the orthodox, authentic Sunnah and of the Prophet and the Quran itself. So he obviously won't agree with the killing, but he agrees with the idea that they're not actual Muslims, so they're heretics. So he downplays the killing of Muslims on the basis that these are actual moderate Muslims that are not true believing Muslims. Can you see how dirty and how slimy and how sleazy and how such a scumbag Jay is? You know, I questioned him in 2012 at the church in Somerset. I did another debate with him in 2006, years back. That was a radio debate. But I questioned him, and this was before his church, because he called himself a Mennonite. I said, why was it, and this was when he was regular at Speaker's Corner. I don't think he's there anymore. He's left for the States. Why is it that every week, whenever you have your ladder put up, there's an individual that stands next to you? And I asked him in the church, you have a look at those who want to see the debate, that there's an individual that stands right next to you. This was before he had that other short lady joining him and so on. But there's an individual that's with you, next to you, doesn't speak, but he's got an Israeli flag draped around him and draped around his own little table that is right next to you. How do you explain that? How do you justify that position? This was, of course, before the genocide, but there were killings that were taking place, Operation Pillar of Defense, Operation Iron Lead, and so on and so forth. All of that had happened, and he had no answer. So these guys here are not concerned about violence. They're not concerned. Have you ever heard him speaking once against those Christians that were killed in Gaza, against those Christians that were killed in the West Bank, against that particular church that was bombed by the Israelis, where those 3 women went outside to go and fetch water, and they were blown up by the Israeli snipers in cold blood? In cold blood, the church of Sophronicus, I forget the name of it, in November, December 2023. Did you ever hear anything from this lot? Not once. Not once. When it comes to the Jews and the Zionists killing Christians, that's fine. They can't speak out against that. When you have some fragmentary, rudimentary, say, when there's killings both ways, and you've got a death cult that's operating in Nigeria, which is majority people that are being killed are Muslim, suddenly, and there are, of course, some Christians that are being killed, and there's other aspects surrounding that, suddenly this becomes a Christian genocide. And so it's a useful tool for missionary tautology. It's how missionaries want to try and present their own propagandist version of how Islam is violent and cruel and committing genocide, and therefore, by extension, you shouldn't therefore support the Palestinians, because this is the result. If Muslims are killing Christians in Nigeria, why should you support them in Gaza? This is what they are. This is what they do. This is the whole point. So this is what we basically have in relation to this. I want to end on that point with an excellent interview that was done on Nigeria on Democracy Now, which was, I think it was 2 days ago. Wole Soyinka, a phenomenal Nobel laureate, Nobel Peace Laureate, that basically spoke on the same issue. And I want people to have a look at this particular show. Wole Soyinka was a phenomenal African thinker, and he's a legendary author. Just have a look at this and hear what he says about Trump's attack. I just want to point this out to you, and if you can just share the screen and expand this.
As we turn to Wole Soyinka, the acclaimed playwright, author, and poet, the first African to win the Nobel Prize for Literature.
Christianity in Nigeria, on this through various administrations. Secondarily, it fits this sort of area in America for a very long time.
Than Christians. It's not that there isn't violence, but the
persecuted, that's a thing. So
is the apparatus.
Guests in Lagos, Nigeria, will speak with Wole Soyinka, the acclaimed Nigerian playwright, author, and poet, the first African to win the Nobel Prize for Literature. It happened in 1986. The Trump administration recently revoked his visa to come to the United States. The decision came after Soyinka referred to President Trump as the white version of the ruthless Ugandan military dictator Idi Amin. And we're joined by Anthea Butler, professor of religious studies at University of...
They revoked his visa because he described Trump as a white version of Idi Amin. Imagine that.
Pennsylvania. Her most recent book is titled White Evangelical Racism, The Politics of Morality in America. Professor Butler,
White
we're going to begin with you.
Racism. And what you saw there on display in the video by Jay was white evangelical racism on full display. And they've got their Uncle Toms. He's got a black boy with him. You know that Korede, that chap there who's next to him? He's Jay's boy. He's Jay's boy. So it's like the proverbial house nigger that you use to promote your own imperialist agenda. That's what they're doing.
Explain, were you surprised by President Trump going after Nigeria this weekend, saying they could bomb, they could strike, they could move in with guns blazing, saying Christians are being killed there? Can you explain where this is coming from?
I'm never surprised at the hyperbole of our president. Let me just say this. I think that this has been a longstanding concern of evangelical Christians in the United States. And so if you think about this in terms of the president's base, this is a move, I think, in part to energize them, to have them think that he is thinking about Christians in other places. So this theme of persecution of Christians is a very politically charged and actually religiously charged theme for evangelicals across the world. And when you say that Christians are being persecuted, that's a thing. So for him to say this on Truth Social, I think provides two things. One is this is something that the administration is thinking about insofar as somebody probably told them to think about it. That's number one. And number two, it serves another purpose. It serves to energize his base. And so while this issue of religious violence has been prevalent in Nigeria for lots of different reasons, I would submit to you that it's not simply just about violence against Christians, but it's religiously inflected violence because of different factions that are on the ground and groups. And this is not just about Christians, but it's also involving Muslims. It's involving other groups that are there. It's a complicated situation.
In fact, with Boko Haram, you have them most attacking in the north, and in the north, it's more Muslims that are being killed than Christians. It's not that there isn't violence.
You see what she says? It's mostly Muslims that are being killed. So if it's mostly Muslims that are being killed, then why are you not talking about a Muslim genocide in Nigeria? If you want to talk about a genocide, why are you not talking then about a Muslim genocide in Nigeria?
But the Nigerians are questioning whether this is religiously based. So the question is this coming from the United States? Trump said he asked Congressmember Riley Moore of West Virginia and Congressmember Tom Cole of Oklahoma and House Appropriations Committee for a report on the matter. Congressman Moore had sent a letter to Secretary of State Rubio urging the Trump administration to take immediate action to address systematic persecution and slaughter of Christians in Nigeria, saying that Nigeria is the deadliest place in the world to be a Christian. So talk more about the white Christian nationalists in the United States going after Africa's most populous country and maybe of relevance, the largest oil producer, as Venezuela is in Latin America, which...
You catch it? White nationalists concerned all of a sudden about black Christians in Nigeria. The height of cynicism. When they are against their own blacks in the United States, they're concerned conveniently when it suits them against, but it's an Islamophobic agenda. This is the whole point. It's an Islamophobic. It's got nothing to do, even if they were hypothetically being killed, it's got nothing to do with them dying. They don't care. They're more concerned about promoting an Islamophobic agenda. That's the whole aim.
President Trump is threatening to attack, but the largest oil producer in Africa.
Yeah, I find that very interesting that these are two oil-rich states that he is interfering in. So that's number one. Number two, let me say this about Nigeria and Christianity. There has been a religiously sort of back and forth between Nigeria and America for a very long time. If you think about that towards televangelists, and that sort of exploded in the 1990s. In the 2000s, you have many giant mega churches. So it's no surprise that, politicos here, especially those who are Republican and Christian, would be interested in Nigeria for not just, financial gain, but also because this is a country that in the South is predominantly Christian. Okay, so that's number one. And number two, I think, which is actually even more important, is that this is a place where the administration could prosecute a holy war. And what I mean by that is that they can use certain kinds of things that have happened in the news. If you think back 2 years ago, there was a massacre of Christians during the Christmas season. There have been, Boko Haram capturing girls. These were mostly Muslim girls, actually.
Those girls that they captured, mainly, again, Muslim girls, not Christians.
If we think about all of these cases, this falls into that kind of framework that evangelicals understand, first of all, and then secondarily, it fits this sort of savior narrative of this American sort of ethos right now that is seeing itself going into countries for a moral war, a moral suasion, as it were, to do something to help other people. Now, I think it's very interesting to also think about the fact that the president of Nigeria is a Muslim. He is married to a Christian wife. Nigeria is complicated religiously. And I don't think that the ways in which this is being portrayed in, the popular ways in which we report on what he says, right, the president says, is a way that you should understand Nigeria. It is much more complicated religiously. There's religious violence. There have been people in this country for years who have been working on this through various administrations. And it certainly was going on during the first round of the Trump administration, but he didn't seem to care about it then.
So how come was Trump not interested in it back then? When it was worse during the Trump administration, I mean, there were more killings statistically speaking. Of course, there was no Israeli genocide as you have it now at that stage.
Why now?
And finally, before we go to Wole Soyinka, the Trump administration sharply reducing the number of refugees admitted annually to the U.S. to 7,500 people from like 125,000. Most of those 7,500 will be white South Africans who are...
Imagine that. They're reducing the number of refugees. As I mentioned earlier, they're talking about taking a genocide in Nigeria. Well, how come you're not allowing Nigerians to come in and you're taking white South African nationalists who are not being subjected to a genocide at all in my country? There's no white genocide happening. It's garbage. Garbage that only the birds can believe in. Or even birds are far more intellectual and have a slightly higher level of IQ than this current administration, but nothing like that. But you're only giving them refugee status?
Are mostly Christian.
Yes. I mean, I think this is sort of disingenuous to say you're going to go in and save Christianity in Nigeria when you have, banned Nigerians from coming to this country. It's very crucial in a way, because I think about this in terms of places like Houston, Texas, where Nigerians make up a huge part of the population there, and they are very active in engineering, finance, in medical issues, medical doctors, things like that. You are banning a community that is very, how shall I say, that when they come to the United States for education or to work, very professionalized. This is not, people who are coming because they want to seek asylum. They are coming to contribute and they want to be able to come in. But the fact that this administration is on the one hand saying, we want to go in and save Nigeria, but on the other hand, not letting Nigerians into the country, and you're only going to let South Africans in, and white South Africans to boot, that is pretty much telling you exactly where this Christian nationalist administration is.
Well, Anthea Butler, professor at the University of Pennsylvania, we thank you for being with us as we turn to Wole Soyinka, the acclaimed playwright, author, and poet, the first African to win the Nobel Prize for Literature. You teach at NYU Abu Dhabi. You're not in the United States, and looks like you can't come here because the Trump administration has revoked your visa. Can you start off by responding to President Trump saying that they're going to strike Nigeria guns blazing?
Could you repeat what Trump was alleged to say? I missed the latter part.
Trump said in a social media quote that he could attack Nigeria guns blazing to save Christians in Nigeria. Interestingly, Professor Soyinka, you were raised as a Christian, and now you've been denied your visa. Can you respond to him saying he's cutting off aid to Nigeria and could strike Nigeria?
Yes, guns blazing, and the word vicious, I think, even appeared in either that statement or another. That the war will be vicious, etc., etc. Let me begin by just stating my conviction that we must separate the problems which Nigeria has and has had for decades. Separate that from President Trump's recent response. The Christian Islam, or Islam versus the rest, or even Christianity versus the rest, that kind of dichotomy has existed, as I said, for quite a few decades. It's escalated, it's become truly horrendous in many aspects since politics got mixed up with religious differences. In other words, when religious differences began to be invoked as a means of political power and even social and economic powers, we've had unquestionably the issue of impunity. In other words, if we identify, for instance, certain extreme groups in one religion, and the perpetrators of these horrors get away with it openly, and I'm going to illustrate. There was a girl, a student, who was brutally lynched, really savage and dehumanized before being killed. I wrote a play about it. I was so exercised by it. I wrote a play which was produced, in fact, in my department in Abu Dhabi. And the allegation was that she blasphemed against the Prophet Muhammad, which she did not, by the way. I mean, that's proven. Right. It's bad enough. It's excruciating enough. But when it is followed by the perpetrators who were charged to court, who were eventually acquitted, or at least the charges dismissed, when it gets to the level where such perpetrators go on internet displaying a box of matches and saying, I quote, "There's the box of matches with which I killed. I was the one who set fire to her," and nothing happens to them, and they walk free. Now, it is those kinds of incidents which escalates in popular perception that there is a brutal war going on between Christians and Muslims. Whereas in truth, we're dealing with extremists. We're dealing with political Islamists, known sometimes as ISWAP across West Africa or Boko Haram within Nigeria. These are the real enemies of society, not Islam as such, not followers of Islam, the Muslims as such. It's the political Islamists, extremists, the psychopaths. Unfortunately, they've allied with similar movements outside Nigeria, and so they have a steady supply of arms. I mean, they carry arms so sophisticated that sometimes the military cannot subdue them. Then you had, frankly, let's be honest, some very lackadaisical leaders in the direction of curtailing, just curbing this monstrosity of fundamentalism, of homicidal fundamentalism. We have groups very well armed who swoop on villages and they cite fidelity to Islam. Now, these are the real enemies, not Muslims. So when we have sweeping statements like that of Trump, he's not making things easy for there to be a resolution, because it's expanding the zones, the regions of hostility, expanding them to an extent that it becomes almost
Well, SHUAIB, we only have a minute, and I did want to repeat, since it's so important, his quote, "If we attack, it will be fast, vicious, and sweet," is what he said. But I wanted to ask you in this last 30 seconds, why your visa was revoked to the United States.
I have a feeling that I haven't been flattering Donald Trump, and I see no reason to do that. And there have been occasions when I've had to speak up quite bluntly.
You compared him to Idi Amin of Uganda?
Oh, yes. I think Trump should be flattered by the fact that I compared him to Idi Amin. I mean, Trump has said he likes war. I mean, I'm quoting him. Idi Amin was a man of war and brutality. Idi Amin considered himself a liberator. He called himself the last king of Scotland. He was going to liberate Scotland from the British.
Well, SHUAIB, we have to wrap, but I'm going to ask you to stay with us because we're going to do part 2 of this discussion at democracynow.org. People can check it out. Well, SHUAIB.
So that's basically part of Wole Soyinka's speech, and of course Anthea Butland. So the argument is that this extremist groups or death cults that may exist there are involved in fratricidal killing or sanguinary forms of attacks against a whole host of people, and a large majority of them happen to be Muslim, but there's no evidence whatsoever of Muslims or state-sponsored genocide against Christians. Nothing whatsoever. Nothing. And I think this is a distinction that that people should basically have. I mean, look at this. As it stands now, the US has cut validity for applicants from 4 African countries. They are Cameroon, Ethiopia, Ghana, and what's the 4th country? Anyone guess what's the 4th country? Nigeria. Nigeria. I'll share this with you last. I thought this was much, much earlier, but this was actually from July 2025. So again, did the genocide just start now? This is here. Just show this, Mohammed. US cuts visa applicants from 4 African countries, 11 July 20, meaning you banned. You banned. You can't enter. Don't even bother. Well, I don't think Nigeria is making for next year's World Cup in any event, but you cannot enter. The United States announced sweeping changes non-implemented for Cameroon, Ethiopia, Ghana, and Nigeria. And it's described as a part of a global reciprocity realignment, a sharp shift from previous visa terms, which often allowed multiple entries over 2 years or more. Nigeria has denied reports that only offers single entry visas for 3 months to US citizens. So they want to take basically some sort of sanction against Nigeria. On Friday, the U.S. Embassy in Abuja denied that Trump was engaged with that as punishment for Nigeria not giving to its demands. He says that the real reason for the visa restriction was technical and security benchmarks that had to be respected. This is a U.S. Embassy. So it's quite fascinating that it's so concerned about Nigeria and Nigerian Christians, but won't even allow them entry for a significant period of time to the United States, or even for that particular matter, give them refugee status. So it's not concerned. It's not concerned. Those Christians out there who think Trump is your God or your savior, this man is a fool. He's a narcissistic maniac. He's an imbecile. He's demented, just like Biden before him. He's got no understanding on the political dynamic. You know, he's a psychopath himself. To describe him as a supervillain, you know, actually even puts him as gives him too much credit, because this guy is a fool. I mean, this guy is a total and utter fool, evil fool, a useless man, and someone with no degree of sense in terms of what is happening in his country and certainly different parts of the world. So that was Wole Soyinka and Anthea Butler on democracy. Now, I thought I might just share that to provide some sort of context that there is a genocide happening, but the genocide we see happening is in one place, and that's been committed by the State of Israel, and that's been confirmed by almost every single genocide scholar out there. So I think that's what I have to say, Mohammed. Any comments from you?
No, that was excellent, brother Yusuf. So much information, so much resources for everybody to take in and to learn from. And we really we encourage people to go through the stream and take out particular snippets and put it onto your social media, because we need to unpack this and call it out for what it is, just fake news. And what Brother Yusuf said, for the last 2 years, the genocide has been happening, but it's not in an African continent or an African country, but rather it's in Gaza. So our prayers and supplications go for the people of Palestine and, of course, Muslims around the world for what they're going through, the oppression, and, of course, Sudan, which is not even meeting or coming onto the news, hardly is even mentioned. So it's very fascinating. I love the way you unpacked the narrative, because it's about resources. It's about natural resources which Western governments are trying to, take from these countries by any means necessary. And once again, Brother Yusuf, thank you for joining me for today. I know it's late to where you are. It's like 8 p.m. here in the UK. I don't know what time
we're going close to 11 in South Africa.
Wow.
So we will get pretty late, yeah.
Thank you so much, Brother Yusuf, for joining me. For those brothers and sisters who are watching, don't forget to go to the South African Debate Initiative channel and subscribe, like, and share. Once again, thank you for watching. Final words from me, and then I'm going to pass on the mic to Brother Yusuf. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the COVFF channel. I've got so much content to be uploading soon, especially from the Dawa store here in Coventry, and I really appreciate your support. Final words to you, Brother Yusuf, before we wrap it up for today.
Yeah, well, thank you for this. Like, share, subscribe, hit the like button, share the stream, edit it out. I'm sure Muhammad will probably find one or two aspects to edit this on a short to upload this. There's no copyright in any of our programs. We have been shadow banned in the past, and I believe his channel may still be shadow banned. So there was some content on Israel that he had done, which was on the Coventry Faith Foundation, which you may not find there because we want to see if the algorithm kicks up. But if you want to view those past streams we've done, you can view it on the South African Debate Initiative YouTube channel. I think Sudan is an important topic. We need to discuss and focus on Sudan and probably unpack what is really going on there. I last did a write-up on Sudan, I think a long time ago in a public newspaper in 2004, on the then Janjaweed, who were the forerunners to the RSF. And maybe in the next few forthcoming days, we may delve into Sudan, or probably get someone that is more of an expert on the Sudanese crisis. So till then, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. And of course, Assalamu alaikum. And peace be upon everybody out there. And that's what we always call for. That's what Islam calls for. And that's what we even say when we supplicate, Allahumma anta salam, on you be peace. And we ask you for peace. And we want you to invoke your blessings on us and on people throughout. And of course, keep the Palestinians in your supplication as usual. And we certainly continuously support their struggle and indeed their liberation. So till then, next time, take care and all the best.